Okay, clearly this is going to be about Superman the movie from 1978. When I was a young kid, say 3 or 4, growing up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, my dad's mom, who had raised 7 kids of her own in a little 2-bedroom house, cared so much for her grandchildren to enjoy spending time with her that she spent her little Social Security check on cable and even pay channels like HBO and the Disney Channel. So we'd have something cool to watch, when we stayed over. And when VCRs came out, she was the first person in our family to get one. And my sister and I would love just spending the weekends with her, renting movies or catching them on cable, and just experiencing these stories together. Now, in the early 80s, most of the programming that I can recall anyway on the Disney Channel was just like family-friendly movies that had come out in cinemas years earlier. And Disney Channel had licensed, so that's like PG movies or PG-13 films edited for television. Just safe versions of already safe films. And for that time anyway, they were fine. And they were aimed at the whole family, not just a bunch of like programming for infants or programming for tweens. At least my memory of it is just that it was like, okay, everybody on the Disney Channel is just going to watch this together as a family. So, thanks to the early days of the Disney Channel and HBO and Showtime, I was introduced to all these perennial modern classics like the Star Wars movies, the Indiana Jones movies, E.T., and of course, Richard Donner's and Christopher Reeve's Superman, the movie. And I said Reeves, that's apostrophe S. I know his name is Christopher Reeve. It's a big, big sticking point with fans. The film was released in December of 1978, and I was born in September of 1979. So there's no way I could have seen the film in cinemas on its original theatrical run. In fact, I wasn't able to see it in a proper cinema for like another couple decades. But of all the films that I collected, ticket stubs for over the years, this film represents my first, earliest memory of ever seeing a movie, even though I saw it on cable. I must have been about 4 years old when my mama, that's what we called our grandmothers back in Louisiana, her name was Winnie. My mama and I first settled in with our Popeye's chicken and biscuits, our go-to film watching meal. And she switched on her old cathode ray tube crackly TV and turned the cable box to whatever number Disney Channel was, and in the 30s or something. And when those credits started flying toward me, my little 4-year-old brain just completely sort of melted down. I was like, whoa, what is this magical thing happening? And that was it. Like, even the opening credits, like, my life was changed forever. My world expanded. And suddenly there were no boundaries whatsoever. Like, anything was possible if that could happen, you know? And then obviously as the movie goes on, you see this guy flying and everything. It just really shook me and just like lit a fire. I started drawing. I would pick up a pen anytime I could. I would just start drawing Superman, Superman flying, Superman and Lois, Superman Lex, Luthor. It was just Superman 24/7 for me. I watched all the cartoons. The old Fleischer ones would play on Disney Channel, and Ruby Spears and the Super Friends. I still have my Kenner Superpowers Superman figure. This is the original release one, not a reprint or anything. Um, and when it was Halloween, I was Superman, and in college I wore my lucky Superman shirt for any exam, and I made straight A's, by the way. This character just became my ultimate hero and role model. I mean, he was a guy who could fly, and he was from another planet, and he lived in a big city, and he was good and kind and just. And he was everything I felt intuitively as a kid that everyone had the capacity to be. I felt a profound resonance with everything he stood for. No matter how badly he was bullied or attacked by the agents of cynicism or greed or self-interest, he always chose the noble and fair and just path, and it was always harder to do. Like, he could always just do whatever he wanted, but he chose to do the right thing. Because how could he live with himself if he didn't? And although I know I'm not alone in this, Jerry Seinfeld and Nick Cage are famous Superman fans, but like, a lot of people are cynical. They love to hate on Superman because he's corny and He has what they consider to be too many powers to make him interesting. They say of course he always wins because he's so powerful. It's so easy for him. What's the point? And I get that on like a very surface physical level, especially in the movie sequels, which we never need to talk about. But what these people don't seem to either care about or see is just what Christopher Reeve and Richard Donner absolutely nailed so remarkably in this movie, that here is an orphan. He's lost all of his people. Okay, he's not just an individual orphan. He's like an orphan of a species. Like he's got nobody. He's the only one left. And his people went through great pains so that he could survive. So he feels this tremendous burden of needing to become worthy of having been saved. This isn't just some mindless entertainment about some strong guy who can fly. It's philosophy. It's asking each one of us why we're here. How are we going to earn this existence? What are we going to make of it? What good are we going to leave this world after we're gone? This could be anything. This could be our children, whom we endeavor to raise as kind, responsible people, or our art that touches people's hearts, or our scientific contributions. The really beautiful part about this is that it's generally up to us. It's really our choice. For Superman, it was helping out in any way that he could, to use his extraordinary gifts for the greater good. And that's what I think this film is trying to tell us to do. Use our gifts for the greater good. He knows he doesn't belong here. And all he wants to do with his finite existence on this planet is to earn our acceptance. He desperately wants us to adopt him, to accept him, to love him. Not to worship him, but to love him, like you'd love a sibling or a cousin or a friend. Exactly. And like, don't get it twisted. Sure, he could use all his powers to take over the entire world if he wanted to. But thanks to the way his Earth parents raised him, he will fight that urge if and when it ever arises, even if it kills him. He doesn't see himself as above us. He just wants to belong. That's what I believe Superman stands for. The character of a person who could easily rule over all humanity, but who chooses instead to serve it justly, to help. He's not cynical or arrogant, and despite what people think, he's not invulnerable. His empathy and compassion, which are his greatest strengths, are also his greatest weaknesses. And they're sometimes exploited by the occasional willing evil genius. But that having been said, he's no pushover. If somebody comes for us, he's coming for them. He always has our back like a good friend would, even when we don't deserve him to. He sees the best in people. And he knows that sometimes seeing the best in people is the way to bring out their best. That's what makes this version of Superman so pivotal in my own development at such a young age. Both development of a moral spine and a development of an understanding of how our choices shape the world around us. The choice to see the best in people. The choice to expect the best of people without being a pushover. For a lot of people, religious myths serve all of these purposes, and they provide a moral compass and some sort of role model, and that's totally fine. But for me, it's always been as simple as Superman. Watching this film and many others at my grandmother's house not only shaped my view of the world, but this ritual of sitting down and communing together, having a meal and watching a movie, taking in a story, inspired me to also contribute by telling stories and studying this amazing and magical art form of the cinema. Which brings me to this stub. When I was 21, I left my hometown, my Smallville of Lake Charles, Louisiana, for the metropolis of Los Angeles. I had been accepted to USC's prestigious film school. And at the time, that felt like some sort of destiny calling. I'd put this out into the universe. This is what I wanted. This was who I was. And it's saying right back to me. But when I arrived in LA, the city was big and the school was big and it was populated by a bunch of other young men and women who all had the same dream in a town of intense scarcity. And several of these people were from wealthier backgrounds with Ivy League undergrad degrees who knew this or that famous person or who were related to Hollywood royalty. I just, I felt a shock of anxiety, like I didn't belong there. I felt like, in that first semester, like I needed to quit and move back home. And do what? I don't know. I mean, my whole identity had been wrapped up in becoming a filmmaker. It was just this full-on identity crisis. I didn't know who I was anymore if I didn't have that. And because that's all I had been, I felt now like a fraud. And on top of it, I was going to let everyone down, including my grandmother, who had carried me on their shoulders up to that point and helped push me over that small town wall into my dream. And as I was feeling sorry for myself, like, my whole thing, my whole personality was over, um, I saw at a little movie theater just by campus, this rinky-dink place that doesn't even exist anymore. They were going to play Superman at midnight that night. And, feeling nostalgic and homesick for this film. Sure enough, I got a ticket and I went by myself, which is a common theme. You'll find I watch a lot of movies by myself. It's midnight. I'm tired. I'm depressed. I don't know who I am anymore, really. I sit down and there must have been like 6 people in the whole place. The lights went down, and for the first time in my whole life, I saw the curtains open and this film started playing on a big screen. And the opening credits really flew out of the screen and filled my entire soul. It was the first time I'd ever seen the film not on a TV. And there were no widescreen TVs back then. It was like this little box that I'd seen it on my whole life. And then all of a sudden, seeing it on this huge wide screen was like a whole new experience for me. The sound and the score reverberated in my bones. It blew my mind all over again. It was like the first time seeing it. Reeve, born to play the role, leapt off the screen. Gene Hackman's devilish narcissism resonated on a whole new level since I'd now had a brush with Hollywood, right? I mean, talk about narcissism. And when Pa Kent gave his ultimate pep talk to Clark about not lowering himself to the expectations of others and not giving up because he has a purpose in this world, man, I lost it. I wept. And by the end of the movie, it was like a reset for me. I had stopped feeling sorry for myself. I felt renewed. I went back right into the film school the next day, and the next day after that, and the next day after that, and so on. In the following summer, I scored an internship at the Donner's Company for Richard Donner, who had made this movie. And 12 years after that, my mama sat at home and turned on her crackly cathode ray tube TV, the same one that we'd watched Superman on together on the Disney Channel, and she tuned into the Disney Channel again. And this time, she watched a movie that I co-wrote with a friend from film school. And she was proud of me. And before she died, I thanked her for having watched all those movies with me over and over and over again and never complaining. And I made sure that she knew that she'd made a difference in my life. None of us can leap tall buildings in a single bound. It's a metaphor for going above and beyond. We can care for each other. We can inspire each other. We can fight for truth and justice every single day of our lives, in large ways and in small. No act of kindness is ever in vain. And anybody can be a hero to somebody, even little old ladies on Social Security. I'll be interested to see if you feel the same way when you watch this one. Next time we meet, we'll travel together to a galaxy far, far away. See you soon.